Good morning, councillors, and welcome to the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee of the 10th of June. I declare this meeting open at 9 o'clock. I'd like to advise all meeting attendees that the meeting is being recorded and begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. As all councillors are here, I don't have any leaves of absences, so I will get straight into the reports. The first report is item 4.1. Before I open it for discussion, do any councillors have a conflict of interest? It's the employment land strategy. No? I'll let Dave speak to his report.
Through the chair. So in 2018, council started looking at our land zone for employment. So fundamentally that exercise was to see if we had enough land that would generate jobs to match our population growth. The findings of that study was that yes, we do have enough land for jobs in the future. However, there were some issues that we found out around some of the zonings of the land being a little bit unusual. Some of the land was not market ready, so it didn't have services running to it. So it was effectively paddocks that were really far from any roads or water infrastructure. And other findings were around some of the mixed uses. So, for example, in a mixed use zone, you can have a 24-hour operating warehouse, but you can also have a childcare next to it, an adult shop next to it, and a school next to it. So from those findings, we formulated a strategy on how to best optimise our employment lands. That strategy is attached to this report. Fundamentally, the goal of the strategy, and there's 4 priorities that are outlined in the report but also outlined in the strategy itself, is to optimise our employment land. So to make our land competitive Southeast Queensland wide. So we bid for investments in Southeast Queensland, so we compete against areas like Redlands and Ipswich and Brisbane to attract investment. The document itself goes over 4 priorities. It's a public-facing document, which is rare for councils, so we're giving the industry a real good look into how we are planning to deal with some of the issues that I mentioned earlier in my talk. So fundamentally, the report itself talks about the initial strategy that we did in 2018, the findings from that, and then the employment land strategy itself outlines key priorities on how we to optimise our employment land. And this document will be a document which will be shared with investors, real estate agents, and it's for the general public to get a good look into how we're addressing some of these issues that were outlined in the initial study. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave, and I forgot to say your title for the benefit of the recording. Dave Radich, Economic Development and Strategy Manager.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradley has a question.
Thank you. Dave, may I ask, the Mayor last round of committees asked for a review of the planning scheme. Will that impact this particular strategy at all?
Yes, through the Chair. So to implement some of these goals in the strategy, we will need a planning scheme amendment, and that will be included in the major review of the planning scheme which the Mayor requested. Okay,
because I notice in the area I represent, I'm just getting inundated with childcare centres after childcare centre, and to be honest, I think that it's just an overabundance at the moment. Just had another possible one coming on the horizon recently, so
So through the Chair, so it will address some of those. So we will meet with councillors individually that have employment lands in there and kind of talk about, because for example, you may be speaking about a mixed use zone. The mixed use zone allows for about 48 different uses within it. What we're proposing to do within this strategy is to refine some of these uses down. So we'll meet with you individually to walk you through those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Mayor Power.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave, in relation to page 4, you talk about Logan has a limited supply of vacant development-ready land.
Yep.
So there's land identified in our planning scheme, but obviously it hasn't been developed so that businesses can basically, buy it and be ready to go in. Is this mainly because North Maclean's not ready?
Through the chair, it's not, that is one of the factors, but it's also a factor that when we look at our employment land, it's actually some of it that is existing and zoned is quite far away from roads infrastructure and water infrastructure.
Yep.
So developers aren't really that keen to go and be the first one to deliver all those infrastructures out there. So it's about, we have land that is zoned, but it doesn't have services running to it, so developers can't just build a warehouse there, for example.
Yeah, you take into context that we may have enough land overall, but we haven't got the land in the right places. Close to the motorway, close, Berrinbar type land, that it seems it's the place to go at the moment. I'm worried that you've identified this in a holistic plan, but when it comes to actually finding ready available land in a suitable area that people want to go to, like Berrinbar and that, we haven't got enough available. And with this, can we have a map of what is available, or just a rough map? Because we're open for business, and particularly we want to diversify our rate structure with more industrial sites, because obviously, we get a better rate of return on our rates. We need to be progressing this, and I've known on so many occasions that businesses have come to Logan looking for land, and that's the big issue. They want to find something suitable, and I worry that there's nothing that, we might have all this land, it's either not ready or it's in the wrong location. It's got to be available and ready and in the right location. And I'm just looking at it holistically, that this might be a mistake, that we really need to identify better locations for it, because it's a competitive market out there, and we're, Brisbane's across the road, and, they seem to be going very well as well around here, in particular down Berrinbar. And I'm just wondering whether we're not looking at this in a different light.
So through the chair, on page 13 of the background paper, it shows some of our employment land.
Yep.
It is my opinion that we have the correct location for employment land, but the issue is that we don't have services running to it. So once we have services running to it, roads and water infrastructure, that's when we'll be more competitive in the market, because it's hard to convince a developer to invest in the city where they've got such a huge upfront capital investment to build a road or build water and sewer infrastructure.
Yep.
So a lot of our future employment land is around the Park Ridge connector in Park Ridge, and a lot of that is still completely undeveloped, and it's been zoned for over 10 years and still not developed, but the issue is that there's no services running to it.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do. We're reviewing that, seeing if we can include some of that in the local government infrastructure plan. What are the incentives that we can provide to activate some of those pieces?
Berrinbar's gone off the map at the moment. There's 4 projects, 160 million being invested. I'm just worried that once Berrinbar's full, we're not going to have anything ready or available in the right location for investors to come into the city. We made Berrinbar happen. Logan Council made Berrinbar happen, and maybe we may have to look at making it happen somewhere else, because let's face it, it seems to be that developers come into this city, they get the rezoning, and then they want to sell it, and no one wants to do it with the hard yards. And that's why we did Berrinbar, to make it happen. I'm just wondering whether or not, there's a bigger strategy involved in this than just identifying land and saying we've got adequate amounts, when we really got to identify the competitiveness of Logan and address, how we can make it happen so that we've got people coming in and going to be happy with the land rather than, you know, we're sending them over there or over here at North Maclean or Park Ridge where there's nothing in place. That's not making it happen.
Well, through the chair, what you're describing is the complete purpose of this report. So it is, so the strategy itself identified that there was vacant, that there was land zoned, but it wasn't serviced and it wasn't competitive. So the background paper and the purpose of this report is to make it competitive. So like we did in Berrinbar, we could run services out and activate the Park Ridge land. Like we have done in Berrinbar also, we've refined the uses in Berrinbar so you don't have a 24-hour warehouse operating next to a childcare. So that's really the purpose of...
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but you've included North Maclean in here and it's not ready and it's probably out of sequence. People are looking for stuff in and around this area near the motorway, and you know we can see it's going, it's booming. We need to identify more land in that area. Forget North Maclean, it might be 10 years away before people really invest in there. We need to, you know, we've got to be competitive. The city's got to be competitive.
Mr Mayor, I'll let the Director, Dave Hanson, respond to that one.
I'm happy.
You're happy?
Not happy.
You've had your speech.
Happy with the report. I know what it's doing, but...
Yeah, through the chair, I just guess draw your attention to the Northern Park Ridge area where a company called Point Corp is currently developing about 120 hectares of land, you know, in the exact spot where we've contemplated through the local government infrastructure plan and through the planning scheme for 10 years, like the manager said, and hasn't happened to date, but it is happening. They're delivering it on the ground now. So the purpose of this work was really to get ahead of that feeling that Berrinbar's coming to the end of its development life and what's next. And what's next is actually happening in the northern part of Park Ridge. So this will then cast the net further and where to after that. So all of the things that you've raised, I think, are right down the alley of this piece of work, and Council will get the chance to consider those specific recommendations around specific areas as part of the planning scheme major review.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. Through the chair, the North Maclean, was the land rezoned from residential to the MEIA? I don't know.
Through the chair, because North Maclean is in the PDA, it was rezoned at the time that the PDA was declared. So the PDA and North Maclean, while it falls within Logan City Council's boundary, we actually have no control over the planning in that area or the delivery of services to that area.
All right, because the residents there don't want it. I don't want it there, and I agree. I don't think it's a suitable place for it. The residents bought there for residential. They didn't buy there thinking that it was going to be rezoned into industrial. As it is, there's only one light industrial, and that's actually one of our depots that's sitting there currently. So I'm not even sure where it's actually going and where it's going to go. It just says North Maclean. I have no idea where it's going. Do you?
Through the chair, you mean the boundaries of the PDA?
No, like where are they rezoning so that the industrial area is supposed to go into North Maclean? Like I know it's somewhere on Crowson Lane, but Crowson Lane is all residential.
Through the chair, it's actually shown in the map that Dave, was it page 13, Dave?
Yeah, I'm on page 13, but I've got like this little boundary and that's it.
The history behind Council's positions of North Maclean are quite long and winding. So Council has previously taken the position that it didn't support aspects of North Maclean, so I'm more than happy to work you through that history in detail. And we also have the developers within North Maclean, even though we don't have any planning powers, they have come to see the Council and to seek our feedback on what they're planning to do. So it's a major light, medium and semi-heavy industrial estate. But as David said, we don't have any planning powers to regulate.
Because I don't agree with it. I think they're trying to push through to upgrade Crowson Lane so that we can get this in, and I don't think it's appropriate, I don't think it's needed, I don't think it's in the right place. So yeah.
Unfortunately, Councillor Wilcox, the PDA overrides everything that any one of us would want to vote for, so we don't have the control over it. It's the state has dictated where it would come, and they've done it for quite some time now. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. I do know the history of that particular one, and I'm happy to talk to you, Councillor Wilcox, later, because there is a bit of history with previous councillors. I just want to ask David, David Radich, that is, not David Henson, where it says Springwood, does that also include the area where the bus station will be on Underwood Road, bordering on Brisbane? Does that also include that area there?
Through the chair, yes, it
Approach
does.
to south?
Yeah, so it includes all land zoned for employment across the city.
Right, okay, because that is actually starting to, get a lot of interest from developers, and there was recently an approval. So, as long as that's not,
It will be included.
forgotten.
Yeah, yes. All land zoned for industry across the city will be included, or is included. Sorry.
The goal of the strategy is to activate employment land to make sure that we get it. So no concerns that we would stop employment land from going ahead with it. Councillor Jeremiah.
If you look at page 14, you'll see that 51% of the vacant employment land is in Division 8. So no resident is a fan of a factory or a huge warehouse being built in their backyard. But this is a really, really big and exciting opportunity for our city. Manufacturing and industry, there's an opportunity that it will come back to our country. And having the City of Logan champion that and become one of the last industrial heartlands of our country is really important, and I look forward to see the future of it. End of statement.
Thank you, Councillor Jeremiah. I support your position. Mayor Power.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair. Dave, just in your research, you would have analysed the amount of industrial land that was ready for development?
That's correct.
So that information is available to us?
It is.
Okay, I won't ask that in a recommendation. Thank you.
No problems. Are there any further questions, councillors? Just for me, Dave Radich, how much of the land in the city is actually employment land?
Through the chair, 3.2%.
3.2%. So it's a reasonably small amount of the land mass we've got, but it is essentially, if we don't develop it, then we're not creating any jobs. Like if we want to see jobs come to our city, we don't want 70% of our community to leave the city every day and spend their money elsewhere to work, then we need to really activate this land, and that's what the strategy is trying to achieve, isn't it?
Through the chair, that's correct. And we have a great opportunity for manufacturing in Logan because manufacturing fits our skills profile, but also with the COVID crisis, we have the opportunity to reshore some of our manufacturing. So the supply chain was severed in a lot of our products, and now there are state incentives to bring manufacturing and reshoring some of those, some of the manufacturing that was in Indonesia, China and Thailand back to Australia. Southeast Queensland and Logan is well positioned to attract those companies.
That's fantastic, because we often hear in the media, like different levels of government talking about creating jobs, but without land and without places where people can actually have those jobs, that's really the first step. So council's really at the ground floor trying to get this moving, and I'm really thrilled to see this report come through. Can I please have someone move the report? Thank you, Councillor Jeremiah, seconded by Councillor Bannon. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Wilcox, are you abstaining or voting against?
I'm voting against, especially to North Maclean.
Thank you. So that everyone voted in favour except for Councillor Wilcox, who voted against. I will now move on to item 4.2, which is a confidential item. Before I ask if anyone would like to move us into confidential, can I please have any councillors declare if they have a conflict of interest? Fantastic. Being that there are no conflicts of interest, can I please have someone move this meeting into closed session in accordance with section 2751G and H of Local Government Regulations 2012. This report is considered confidential due to the following reason. The committee will, under the Planning Act, discuss a development application which is commercial in confidence. Can I please have someone move me into confidential? Thank you, Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. We've now moved into confidential. Welcome back to members of the public and the recording of The meeting will now resume. Thank you very much. Councillors, you have a recommendation on the board. Can I please have someone who would like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Bennon. Please raise your hand if you support the motion. That is carried. Please raise your hand if you're abstaining from the motion. So that's Councillors Power, Bradley, Karansky and Hall. Everyone else was in favour. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 5.1 and I'll ask the Manager of Health, Environment and... Oh wait, do we have any general business for Dave?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Councillor Bradley, I'll let you go first and then the Manager has some general business for us.
Thank you. Just in relation to, and I don't want to refer to, I just realised Councillor Murphy might want to leave because it is in relation to a particular haunted house.
Are we making a decision?
No, we're not making a decision, but
if we've either got to go through the process of asking for a declare a conflict of interest if we're going to make a decision, but if it's just
it
a
won't
question...
be a decision,
Okay.
it's just a question.
There we go. Thank you, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, sorry. Sorry to do that to you, Councillor Murphy. Just a question in relation to the haunted house. When exactly did the officers, is that in council system somewhere? If someone did an RTI, is it in council system somewhere that council officers did actually help the haunted house as was stated yesterday?
Yeah, through the chair. So when I was preparing ED&S's
Haunted
inputs...
attraction, sorry.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When we were preparing our input into that report, I asked for a full and frank chronology, I guess, from the ED's team's interactions with Evil Corp and Ms Rose, and that was documented in our system.
It's
so
definitely documented. Okay,
RTI
thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley, and thank you for clarifying that. Does anyone else have general business for the Manager? Dave, do you have general business for us?
Through the chair, yes, I do. We have an item that I'd like to just put up on the screen, which describes a process that we're going to go through. So in the first committee, there was a general business item, time to take a major review of the planning scheme. We've started to look at what that process would look like. What you've got on the board in front of you is a process that we've drafted. So what we're looking to do is, after this meeting, we will share a social media post which you can use to get some feedback from your community. The social media post includes a video of the planning scheme just to provide your community with some context about the planning scheme. We'll also provide some maps of your divisions with the zonings under the planning scheme, also the percentage of what is environmentally zoned, what is emerging community zoned, what is residential zoned. From there, we'll start putting some times in your diaries to go through the planning scheme. So we're going to have an initial one-on-one, then we will have a second one-on-one in July before we have a councillor workshop. So the councillor workshop, I believe, is scheduled in for the 28th of July, where we can talk about all the matters that you've thought of in regards to the planning scheme, hear from what's come back from your community members. From that point on, we'll there craft a report that talks about what has been raised. We will talk about how we can deal with the matters that have been raised, and we're going to craft a process annually for council and the community to provide feedback on the planning scheme. So the flowchart that you've got in front of you is what we're planning to do. We're taking it really seriously. We're putting a lot of effort in. It's going to be a big job for the team to get through this, but we know it's very important. So I just wanted to give everyone the heads up that you'll soon be receiving a social media post, some content around the planning scheme, then some calendar appointments where we can go through with each councillor in each division individually what the planning scheme means for them.
Thanks, Dave. And this is a great opportunity for new and returning councillors to question what zones are in their electorates, and also to do a bit of a deeper dive into the planning scheme to get a better understanding. And this is really hands-on learning, which is one of the best ways I found to learn about the planning scheme when I was first elected. Mayor Power, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair. Dave, stormwater drainage, how are we going to identify those issues? You've probably seen newspaper articles with big drains flowing into people's properties, infill development with drainage issues, Logan Home plan, for instance. How are we going to get to that? How are we going to fix that? And is it going to cost a lot of money? And can we offset it with the development fees? Because Logan Home, for instance, has caused a lot of grief for me as a councillor, and it's still ongoing, and it hasn't been addressed. I know there's a Logan Home plan now, but obviously on the greater scale of everything right across Logan, I think the same problems are occurring.
Through the chair, so 100% we'll be able to address it as part of the annual review of the planning scheme. So the local government infrastructure plan forms part of the planning scheme, so we'll be able to address stormwater matters and local area plans as part of this process.
So, for instance, infill development would have a contribution system so that each developer would contribute amount of money, but what I'm concerned about is how do we address that patchwork quilt issue that creates the problem where you've got water drainage and the need for a central system, but you've got this ad hoc development situation happening. How do you rectify that? Because it seems to be that the only way to address it is run the water into people's properties until there's a central drainage going through there.
So through the chair, we'll rely on some advice from my colleagues in river and catchment engineering, but I believe that the local government infrastructure plan, when it identifies stormwater, can identify where the water should run to in a public asset. So I believe
because we're running it through private property who people haven't developed. We're ruining their lawns because people are putting a pool filter through the system, putting their pool water through, and chlorination is clean. You know, we're affecting people's private properties, and that should be, you know, we should not be affecting other people's quality of life. I'm just starting to think that infill development is more pain than it's worth.
Through the chair, so that can be something that is discussed at the workshop. So just to be clear, we do require infill development in the city as part of the South East Regional Plan, but also for housing affordability. But the types of infill development can be discussed with council, whether it's small lot or whether it's townhouse or whether it's apartment. Those can all be addressed.
And we are going to fix up the planning scheme in regards to developers' tricks to get unfair advantage in the marketplace. And I'll give you an example where people are saying they're building a 2-bedroom unit and they're claiming that they've got a study and they have no door on it, and then when they go to sell it, they're 3-bedroom apartments because they've gone and put the door on it. How can we close that loophole?
Tighten up the definitions in the planning scheme.
Because it's happening, and I know that residents are very angry. They see that all these 2-bedroom unit apartments are being developed, and they turn into 3-bedroom once everything's been approved. And they're saying, well, you know, that should be addressed, because for a start, the infrastructure costs, and they get more units per unit block. Than what and the people that aren't in on this, who play the game straight, they're at a financial disadvantage to those developers who do this.
I'll let the director respond to that question.
Just through the chair, that trick's as old as time, and it relies, to avoid it, it relies on really good conditioning of development approvals. So I believe over the last few years, the Development Assessment Branch has absolutely tightened up the ability to do that. So if you condition that a development is a maximum bedrooms, then that's a breach of those development conditions. If at any time in the future it's discovered that there's more being created, and then there's also equally a trigger to then pursue those outstanding charges into perpetuity. So in the past, I think there was a bit of laxness around some of that conditioning, but in recent times that hasn't been the case. So it forms a breach of the conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Councillor Lane.
So, thanks very much for this. I really do appreciate this. The biggest thing is COVID-19 is going to play a big role in how we can interact with local residents. Is there opportunity to extend this because I'm not comfortable knocking on someone's door or holding a public forum at the moment, and certainly I don't know when that will actually be allowed to happen again. So is that something you're considering as well as part of this, extending the time frame?
Yes, yeah, through the chair. So we can extend the time frame. It's something that's been asked by council. So we'll take your lead on whether this is too short or too long.
Councillor Bradley.
Exactly what the Mayor was saying, I've experienced as well, so I would welcome some tightening of that particular issue. Thank you.
Fantastic. You don't need to vote on this, do you, Dave? It's just providing us information. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions for the manager? There being none, thank you very much, Dave. I'd now like to call the Manager for Health, Environment and Waste, Michael Asnikar, to come up and while I prepare to address his report. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 5.1, which is the 2020-2021 Waste Education Plan. Before I open it for discussion, do any councillors have a conflict of interest on this matter? There being none, I'll ask for Michael to speak to his report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This report presents the 2021 Waste Education Plan for Council's consideration. The delivery of community waste and recycling education is a requirement under Council's waste collection contract. Numerous activities and actions are delivered to promote waste minimisation and good recycling practices. The key activities proposed include the continuation of the popular school and community presentations and tours of the Browns Plains facility, the Put a Grin on Your Bin campaign to encourage proper use of recycling bins and information stalls at community events, which will obviously be COVID dependent. A new initiative is proposed next year to undertake an updated assessment of the composition of various waste and recycling streams to establish current baseline to help inform future opportunities for education and resource recovery.
Thank you, Michael. I have a question from Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. I know Councillor Wilcox was questioning about the contents of the recycling and is there any way, is this the time where we can actually ask for things like stickers or some sort of something to actually try and encourage the right behaviour?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. The concept of stickers has been raised numerous times, so I think the discussion needs to be, if we produce these stickers, where are they likely to end up? And stickers on wheelie bins, they'll fade, they will deteriorate over time. The recycling bin lids have embossed information on the actual lids themselves in relation to what should be going into those bins. So the stickers, is probably one that I wouldn't necessarily be encouraging just because I've seen.
Okay, so if you lift your lid up, is it possible to have something there on new bins or something? I know you said it's embossed.
It's embossed on top of the bin lid.
Or
I've never seen any embossed underneath the bin lid.
No,
so
no. No, a sticker underneath. Is it possible, something like that?
Is it possible? Well, I mean, production of stickers is possible. How we would actually get them under bin lids would be a bit of a logistical issue, I would suggest. Yeah.
In any promotional stuff that is put out then, can it be encouraged that, what exactly is recycled?
Oh, absolutely, and that I think you'll find that is a focus of our education program, is that it's the education and encouragement of that proper recycling practice, the education around what can go in those recycling bins and how those items are put in the bins, and that's through the through the tours, through the online information, through the brochures, through the stalls we have at events, and through the Grin on Your Bin, which is a very much targeted campaign, to individual bins and streets that have high levels of contamination.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Stemp.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess from talking to the community during my campaign, I just wanted to mention a few items, if I could, in relation to this report. Obviously, there is still a lot of confusion around recycling, which obviously other councillors have mentioned. Concerns over how much of our recycling is actually recycled and where it's recycled, which I obviously now know is busy, which was good to know. And questions about what else can be done to try and reduce the amount of waste that ends up in landfill, particularly the correct disposal of ever-increasing electronic waste, which I know you can obviously drop into substation 33 and can be sorted through the waste facilities. I also believe that some residents don't understand the impact of disposing of landfill waste in a recycling bin and the contamination that it can cause. I believe that should also be a focus. I honestly, which the program's identifying, believe that educating our children is the key, because they then educate their parents and their elders, which is a big element of this program, which I think is great. I understand that that bins such as these, which I found at Oktoberfest last year, which basically educate visitors in relation to waste which can be composted, waste which can be recycled, and waste that ends up in landfill are really great. And I understand they're being used at some Logan City Council events, but I'd like to see them used more widely, because it's a great education tool. I really like the new initiatives that have gone through the program that are coming through this year, and I'd really like to see some more clear statistics moving forward that I can take back to the community, just showing that this education program is actually making an impact. So it was just more some comments in relation to the report. Thank you.
Are you happy to provide that information to Councillor Stemp and possibly all councillors outside of committee? Some of that data that she was requesting there?
Yeah, we can certainly provide some key indicators around recycling rates, disposal statistics, contamination rates. Yeah, we can certainly provide that.
Thanks, Michael. And one of the great, something I noticed about that photo that Councillor Stemp just referenced, you can't see it on the other side of the room, but they call their general waste bin a landfill bin. So it's very clear that if you're putting rubbish into that bin, it's going to landfill. Because I know we're talking about trying to improve recycling rates, but we also want to divert as much waste from landfill as possible. So when you put vegetables and food scraps and things that could otherwise be composted into the landfill bin, it sort of makes you aware that it is landfill. It's not just general waste, which means it disappears into the never never. Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Lane.
Thanks. Through the chair, as a former teacher, I think this program is fantastic. I can see the value in it, especially for the primary school kids, because the primary school kids, it's in their curriculum. They're the champions of it. They're the ones, they know how to recycle, but they're the ones that we also have to educate and that sort of thing. But in saying that, then there's the parent side of it. And I can actually say I've never really read the embossed bit on my bin. Hence why I would really like a sticker to put on it. But if we can't put a sticker on top of our recycling bin, so we can say, this is what needs to go on it, can we get more fridge magnets out there? And you give them to the kids in the schools, because they're the ones bringing it home for the parents and stuff like that. Because I know whenever my youngest comes home and she's been given something, hey mum, I've got this in my bag, can you have a look at it and stuff like this. So they're the ones literally re-educating us on how to do these things. So if we can't do a sticker, perhaps a fridge magnet through this program when they're out there in the schools educating our youth, perhaps that might be an idea for you. And just on 5.1, the Waste Smart Schools, it's on page 30, the postcard design brief, I think you used to have the school kids design these postcards, and I hope that's still, or they used to design something, but that would be something that I would like to see the kids in school, because I know we've got the calendars that the kids design, but perhaps getting the kids in schools designing those postcards and then providing them with an incentive of, I don't know, you get a gift card, you come in to council, you come in, I don't know. throwing it out there, but that would be something that I would like to see to get more uptake from the kids at school and that sort of thing, because the kids are young youth. They really are the champions of environment and waste and recycling education and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Did you want to respond to that?
I suppose only to say general comment. I've seen the educators in action and the kids in these presentations. They are fully engaged. They use a whole range of different techniques to keep the kids' attention and all those things that you're talking about, in terms of the activities they undertake and the way in which they engage the kids in the learning is really good. So I've got full confidence in the way in which the educators undertake these activities to keep the attention of the kids. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. Councillor Lane.
Much like Councillor Wilcox, I've never looked at the embossed part of the wheelie bin. But that being said, I'm not going to tell you to suck eggs and how to do your job. I just am really keen to get whatever material you have on offer so that I can include it in a newsletter. For myself personally, recycling doesn't start at the bin, it starts inside the house, and having something that I can put out to nonners and 50-somethings and 20-somethings is probably going to have more impact than something that's sitting outside on the bin where it's already chucked in a bag and no one's going to sort it out in their front yard. So I'd be keen to receive anything that you have in JPEG or high res that I can include in my materials and put on social media as well.
Happy to provide that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we can work with marketing to provide maybe a collection of various images and things that...
I don't want a slick thing. I just want something that's basic.
Yep.
That says newspaper good, plastic bad.
Yep.
Separate them this way. Yeah.
Sure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Hall.
What was the big objection of the bin stickers? What was the...
The stickers that I've just seen before, stickers get put on bins and they just deteriorate, relatively quickly. Like I said, the tops of recycling bins are embossed, so it's not a perfectly flat surface. You can't, if you put a sticker on it, I don't think it's going to last too long on the top of a recycling bin lid. Put one on the side, perhaps. That's where the grabs go. They will deteriorate over time. I've seen stickers put on bins that they don't last a hell of a long time. So there's probably, yeah.
I'm not sure where you're all buying your bin stickers, but years and years and years and years ago, before we even know it was wrong to do so, a real estate office that I was working at actually did bin stickers, and I'm still seeing, that was about 7 years ago, I'm still seeing those stickers on the bins.
Littering our community.
So maybe it was in fact the material that you're using on the sticker, or the type of sticker that you're using, but they do have the capacity to last a very, very long time, because I still know of one bin that I'm using that still has one of those stickers on it, and that's about 7 years old, which is lasting longer than some of our swimming pools.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get some. Maybe we could get some social media content to put up to ask people if they would like to see bin stickers. We could do some social media popularity gauging and see what the community says. I'm sure the Mayor would like to put something out that to the whole city.
It just seems to make sense, because you can put the information on where the material's going and have it right in your face as you're walking towards it. It should be on the front of the bin, as where we were putting our... Because I'm still getting phone calls today from stickers that I had out 7 years ago on bins.
Might have to get some for your next campaign, Tony. Yes, Councillor Wilcox.
Even if we can't put the bin sticker on our recycling bin outside, I know, and I'm going to say that most of us have got this at home, I have a dual bin with one lid. I'd be happy to even smack that sticker on the top of that bin so I know what I'm doing right in my kitchen. There you go.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Sounds like you might have to investigate some stickers of some kind then.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to take the sticker investigation offline. I can have a think about what some of the options are, and it's particularly around, it's one thing to print stickers, but how do we logistically distribute them? So
through the councillors. Come on.
Or through us.
While you're doing hockey. Councillor Stemp.
Through the chair, I just want to mention, I feel like it needs to be inside the house as opposed to being outside. I know my son's put the rubbish in the bin, and by the time it gets to the bin, they don't sort of, you know, they know which bin it goes into, but I feel like it's got to sort of happen inside the household before it actually makes it out to the wheelie bins. But that's just my thought. That's why I thought maybe something for the fridge that Councillor Wilcox mentioned may be a better option, or just my thoughts. Thank you.
We'll investigate all those options and come back to councillors with some information. Thank you, Michael. If there's no more questions, councillors, would someone like to move the endorsement of this report? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox, seconded by Councillor Karansky. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Noting that there are 2 councillors absent from the room, everybody who is here has endorsed it. Next, we have item 5.2 on the agenda, Logan and Albert Rivers Fish Habitat Enhancement Plan 2020 to 2035 and 5-year implementation plan 2020 to 2025. Before I move into discussion, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare on this matter? There being none, take it away, Michael.
Okay, thank you. One of the key actions identified in Council's Rivers and Wetland Recovery Plan is to promote and support sustainable fisheries. It's clear through the feedback from the Logan Waterways Summit and subsequent surveys that the community values the importance of healthy fish populations in the Logan and Albert Rivers for both recreation and commercial purposes, both of which support local jobs. In response, Council has developed a fish habitat enhancement plan and accompanying implementation plan. This identifies a number of key strategic outcomes to enhance the health of native fish and other aquatic fauna in the Logan and Albert Rivers. Some of the key actions include identifying and removing barriers to fish movement and breeding, improving fish habitat in the rivers, delivering projects that improve the bank stability and reduce pollution runoff, and supporting, engaging and partnering with our community. The actions proposed will be funded through recurrent environmental levy budget allocations. These plans have been developed in close consultation with a river habitat expert panel of community stakeholders, which included government, scientific experts and local fishing and restocking associations. It's presented today for Council's consideration.
Do any councillors have any questions on this matter? Is anyone happy to move? You've got a question, Councillor Bradley? Knock yourself out.
Can I just ask Michael, the area I represent doesn't have the Albert River or the Logan River. Is it possible in the water bodies like Underwood Park Lagoon that have, you know, the wrong fish or the non-native fish, is it possible to include them in something in that particular area in this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the types of activities that we can conduct in parts of the city that aren't within the Logan and Albert catchments, we can certainly capture that in the river and waterway actions for those like the Oxley Creeks and parts of Division 1 that don't fall within the Logan and Albert catchment. So, yeah, those types of things can form part of our ongoing on-ground works.
Without wanting to talk about budget, do you recall that there's some stuff in the budget that relates specifically to those water bodies?
Yes, and maybe I'll talk to Michael afterwards, because I do not want to talk about budget here.
Yes, that's right. So that's why I just thought I'd flag it. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Any further questions? There being none, Councillor Karansky has moved, Councillor Bennett has seconded. Can I please see a show of hands if you support this motion? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Michael, do you have any GB for us?
Yes, just one. As councillors would be aware, our community immunisation clinics have experienced record numbers over the last couple of months, particularly with COVID prompting the community to get up to date with their vaccinations and receive this year's flu shots. During this time and in the foreseeable future, council has incurred and will incur additional costs to meet this community demand and manage the social distancing measures that we have to put in place. Pleasingly, last night we received notification that we were successful in securing $211,000 of grant funding from the state government under the COVID-19 Immediate Support Measures Grant Fund. Awesome. I just wanted to let councillors.
Great work, Michael. Congratulations. Does anyone have any questions on that matter? Would any councillors like to raise general business with Michael? Yes, Councillor Stem.
Through the chair, I was just wondering if I could ask for a briefing on council waste management and recycling processes so that councillors have a better understanding of how it works so they can better brief the community, if possible, please.
Are you happy to organise that, Michael? Do you need a motion or you can just roll it out?
No, I think we can do that through the briefing sessions.
Fantastic. Do any councillors have any questions on that or suggestions they'd like to add? Wonderful. We do have the Manager for Development and Assessment in the room. Do you have any general business for Stephen Ball? Stephen, do you have any general business for us? Thank you. There being no further comments, I close the meeting at 10:27. Thank you very much, councillors.